Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 42 of Pink Sheep and Friends on Friday. I hope you guys are having a good start to your weekend. If you are here on your lunch break, welcome as well. I did want to point out, I think that this year I have decided that we are going to make Pink Sheep and Friends more of a 30-minute deal instead of an hour. I feel like this will give people more of an opportunity, especially if you're watching on a lunch break, to actually catch the entire episode. I feel like it will give more people an opportunity to join me on Fridays if they don't have an entire hour to commit to coming on to a live chat. But I am super excited about today's chat, and I would also love if you guys want to be on Pink Sheep and Friends, or if you have people that you'd like to see me bring on to chat with, you can also always send me a message and let me know who you would like to nominate. I can reach out to them and see if they would be interested in coming on and chatting with me. So let's see if today's guest is here, and she is. So today we are welcoming Clarisa of Crochet Cakes to Pink Sheep and Friends, and I am adding her right now. She's working and lurking. Welcome, and good evening from Bristol, UK. Hello, glad you are here.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, and let me turn up my sound so I can make sure. Oh yeah, it was like way down. There we go. Now I should be able to hear you.
Okay. Let me know, because sometimes these headphones act up and they're like, no, not today. We're not working with you.
Oh no,
So,
you're good.
okay.
I can hear you. And I see your shirt. I
Yeah.
almost was going to wear the same one, and I was like, we're going to twin, and I forgot. I love it.
I was so excited when it came on time, because I can't, when you buy things nowadays, you like check the tracking, like, is it here yet? Is it here yet? And I'm like, oh, please make it before the live. And it did. It got here on Monday, and I was super surprised because I literally just received the tracking, and then it was in my mailbox.
And did you get that one on Etsy or Bonfire?
Bonfire. Because
And those tend to take a little bit longer.
No,
so
it was fine. Like, I was like, oh, right, these run on campaigns. So I was like, let me check if I got in or not. And yeah, it took about a week from print to getting here. So I was very impressed.
And I've been really happy with them so far. I mean, I feel like there have been a few times where people will get something and like the print's a little crooked or something, but they'll replace it. So, they've been good.
This one was great.
And I haven't even released this one yet, but this is one that's going to be coming. Of course.
So cool.
So that's on the coming up list. But of course, I try to order everything ahead of time so I can be like, hey, look, this is what it's actually going to look like.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you have to. Hi, Dempsey. I see you. I think somebody said they liked my frames. I didn't catch who. These are, I don't think you can see that, can you?
Maybe a little. You'll still have to tell me what it says.
It says Iris app fill for Zenny. So these I got online, my prescription and everything, and they were just $80 versus what my optometrist charges, the insurance. I was like,
yeah, at least close to 200. I mean, I think most of my frames have been at least in like the 120s, 130s, that range.
Oh, like
and that was Drea Crochet. So thank you for
No, these were $80 frame and prescription. So I was like, I only need them to see up close, which is every day for 8 hours a day, basically, because but yeah, it's supposed to be a comfort. You only need glasses to see up close, and I'm like, so all the time.
Yep. Yeah, I'm the opposite. So I have to wear glasses when I drive. And that's pretty much it for now. But both of my parents had big Coke bottle glasses from the 80s, so I know what's coming.
Yeah. No, I've been lucky. My parents only use reading glasses so far as well. Mom did choose the progressives because you need to read everything nowadays anyway. So she's like, yeah, I'll just have them on all the time. But no, I've been particularly happy.
Well, I would love to know while we're talking about glasses, because I don't do this often, but if you guys are watching, let us know if you wear glasses or not.
Oh
Because
yeah.
I'd love to know how many people are watching that actually have to wear them, and if you have to wear them for driving or if you just have to wear them for reading. Like, that's always interesting to me, and I have not ever asked that question. So there we go.
Well, mine
Um,
was recent. I hit 30 and I needed glasses. Like it was just, it's so funny because people, and I was talking about this with my chiropractor because I feel like in the 90s, people are like, when you're in the 30s, that's when life begins. And then
yeah.
in my 30s, I'm like, it's all been downhill for me. Like the series
No.
of events that have happened since I hit 30 and the loss of family members, it has not failed yet. So I'm like
Yeah.
dreading 33. I am not gonna lie. I'm like, I don't think
Well,
I'm liking this.
my husband's turning 40 this year,
Oh, that's a
so
big
that's a
one.
whole new world.
Hmm. I see a lot of people do wear glasses.
Yes.
Cheaters,
Yeah.
but I really need them for everything now.
Yeah. I agree. I
Uh,
mean, it's been like 2 years since I've had my prescription updated. So like
mm,
I know that's a no-no, and I'm wearing like 3-year-old glasses, and I'm like, I should probably go back in.
Kirsty, yes, I feel like I just turned 30 and I'm on my
Yep.
almost mid 30s and I'm like,
Yep.
I'm not sure how I feel about this. Like,
Yeah. And I do think that subconsciously we tend to attract people of our own age. And I know a lot of it's
yeah.
like we grew up around the same things. We have similar interests in a lot of ways. We understand what
Hmm.
we grew up in, what we grew up with. Because I'll be 35 this year. So
Okay,
it is
yeah.
like I tend to, and I don't ever ask, but I just realize like, oh wow, look, like we're all the same age.
I know it's really interesting because sometimes I see the statistics, because when you're trying to build a business, you're like, okay, who am I attracting? Who should I be working for? What are our common interests and whatever? And I feel it, my statistics in terms of like social media have been the same in my real life, my entire life. I've
Yes.
always been like a very sensitive individual, so I didn't like hanging out with kids my age.
Hmm.
I always went older. I'm like, no, I
Yeah.
need peace and quiet. And
Yeah.
I think one of my, not my first memory, but one that's really vivid is my first day of kindergarten. I came home and I told mom, can I please be homeschooled? I cannot
Oh.
deal with all the people that just all the noise, all the rowdiness, because I was an only child and I was raised by adults, like my grandparents or my parents' friends would babysit and all that. So I was used to just, I don't know, I guess what you call nowadays grandma mode. That was just my vibe. I was like, sit quiet, eat, be fine. That's all you need to do in life.
I think it was old soul was what I
Yeah,
heard a lot. So
yeah,
like when you're in like kindergarten or even first grade or through middle school, like people would call you an old soul if
yeah,
that was your vibe, you
yeah. No,
know?
it's true. And I was like, and I feel that's held through to like all
Mhm.
this start trying to start my own business. And it has its own challenges, right? Because while I absolutely love everyone that I hang out with on Instagram, it's like, oh, okay, so what are people in their 50s liking now? Okay,
Yeah.
so it's like the no fucks decade, that's the 40s.
Yes, I keep seeing that, and I know that my husband would agree
Yeah,
100% that
yeah.
that's the decade.
Yep.
Yep, once you
I
hit 40.
I was mentioning that to my chiropractor as well because we're both in our 30s. I think she's like
Mhm.
34 or
Yep.
30. She's like a year or two older than me. And she's like, yeah, you know what? I feel like the 40s are what the 30s used to be. It's like
Yeah.
the decade where you're like, I'm not even gonna
Yeah.
bother. I am
Yeah.
what I am. Take it or leave it. I'm done. And yeah, I'm feeling that. A lot of self-reflection in my 30s has led me to that same like, hmm,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, and I mean, at that point, I feel like you're lucky if you have been able to, once you get into your 30s and 40s, figure out what you like, surround yourself with those things, and
mm-hmm.
then screw everything else. You
Yep.
know?
Absolutely. And then not feel guilty for, like, I don't know, opening a bottle of Prosecco on a Wednesday at 5. Why am I going
Yeah,
to feel guilty about that? It's bubbles, makes me happy.
right?
So some days you
Well,
just need that.
So I would love to know, and I always talk about this whenever I have any guests on. I try to start back at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
at least a little bit, of like, when did your journey start with fiber in general, whether that was knitting or crocheting, and kind of how has that gotten to where it is now?
So I've not only was I an old soul, I was a very scatterbrained little. Oh, hi, Diva Nails. Hi, hola. Um, I was a very old soul, but also a scatterbrained child. So my grandmother was a seamstress,
Mhm.
and she would babysit me a lot. So I got curious, and I'm like, oh, like all little kids do, I want to help. I want to do what you're doing.
Yep.
So she gave me a needle and thread, and
Hmm.
she assigned me the task of sewing a dress for my Barbie.
Hmm.
Well, I thread my needle and I start, and I'm like, nope, I suck at this. Good day. And I gave up
Oh,
on that.
oh no.
And then when I was 15, my mom, she was a teacher for a long, like, I would say up until I was 10 years old, she was a teacher. So summers, she would always try to get me to craft, and we would do lots of
Yep.
crafts together. And she would
Yep.
buy classes for me and all that. So she not coerced, but she invited my aunt to teach me to crochet. And my
Uh-huh.
aunt was very old school, very strict.
Yeah.
So in Puerto Rico, crochet is with a 1.75 millimeter hook and thread.
Hmm.
That's our crochet because it's hot.
Yeah.
It's humid all year
Yeah.
round, so you don't want to be wearing layers or acrylic or anything like that.
Hmm.
And she actually allowed me worsted weight yarn and a 4 millimeter hook to learn the basic stitches, but she would not let me move past the chain until my chain was even. And I
Gotcha.
said, no, I'm not doing
Yeah, I could
that.
see how those personalities, that would be a struggle.
No, it was. And then I think you got to fast forward to college. I saw somebody wearing a crochet bag, and I took a picture of it, and I said, Mom, I want to learn how to crochet. I want to make a bag.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it kind of started there, but I left it on its own because I found out I'm a very um, project driven person. So I cannot learn a stitch just for the sake of learning that stitch. I need to have a product at
Hmm.
the end of it
Yeah.
that I feel has taken me somewhere. So I kind of left it alone, and I moved on to do my master's degree in Syracuse, New York, which is a
Hmm.
big shift from a tropical island all the way to
Yeah.
winter wonderland. And out of necessity, I kept losing all my hats and scarves on the bus. So um, I just was like, well, time to pick
Yeah.
up crochet again because
Yeah.
I can't I can't afford to keep buying these really warm things and just having them fall off. And
Yeah.
I think so it started in the 20s and then really started when I was 21. So I guess I've been crocheting for 12 years now.
Hmm.
And
Regularly.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
started right in my 20s. And then when I discovered the podcast world, that's when
Yeah.
it was like, there's a community of people out there that do this.
Yes.
Okay. So that was like 2016, right when social media is like, I call it the height because that's when like bloggers were being
Yeah.
recognized and companies started going for bloggers to try and use their yarn, promote it and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's me and my ups and downs with the fiber world.
Yes. Well, so what was your education in? What did you do all of your education
Oh,
focus on?
so nothing that I currently do relates to it
Oh,
actually,
same. I
but
mean, come on. We're all in
yeah,
this together.
my bachelor's degree was in history and my master's
Okay.
degree was in museum studies. And I
Mm.
have worked in a wood shop as a substitute teacher, as a librarian, and as a social media manager for a company that I do not say this lightly, abhorred. I
Oh,
abhorred that
oh
company.
no.
And I did not quit it because it took me so long to find a job.
Yes.
And then
Oh,
I got laid off during COVID, and I was just like, thank you, universe.
yeah.
You heard me. And now I can just be like, oh, well, I got laid off.
Yes.
I'm so sad.
What did you originally want to do with your degrees? Like, did you have kind of these idea of like, this is my this is what I'm gonna do,
for
you know.
sure, for sure. So when I first got my BA in history, I was like, I want to pursue this all the way to a doctorate because I want to be one of those people that gets hired to do research for documentaries. I've
Yes.
always loved fact finding.
Oh,
That's
like
a
that.
thing. And then I was well, you know, I kind of dig culture more than history. History turns you into a very cynical individual once you read war after war
Yeah,
and
that's true.
everything else. And I was like, no, humans, come on, we need to do better.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's preserve the culture of it. It
Mm-hmm.
still has to do with kind of what I studied, and it's gonna be fun. So obviously, when I pursued the degree, I wanted to work as a registrar or collections manager. So I would be in charge of just basically cataloging all the collection
Yeah.
and things like that. But it's really funny because we had several professionals come in to just chat. And one of them was like, listen, I'm not going to be honest with you, finding a job as a registrar or collections manager, once we learn our collection, we don't leave. So you got to wait for us to retire or die. Like she was like, and I was
Honest.
like,
Brutally
I
honest.
was like, well, I'm not sure, you know, I've been 2 years in Syracuse, New York. It's been very away, and I do have family in the States, like a lot of family in the States. So that's what I would do. As soon as I got vacation from my university, I would just leave Syracuse. Oh,
Yeah.
Christy, wait, am I saying this right? Christy Lee
Yes.
Dolls. Your mom that is so
There you go.
cool. Was it like a small museum, an art museum, a history museum, a university museum? Was
So
it
many
like a
museums.
There are. Oh my God, that's another thing you learn. Like when you get into the field, it's like so many mind-blowing facts. Like any museum anywhere in the world only has 10% of their collection on display.
Wow.
So just imagine the Louvre with all those floors and all that huge space, and that's only 10% of their collection.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was mind-blowing to me. 17 years
And for a university.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah.
Oh, did she like it? I have a feeling it's hit or miss because you do spend a lot of time alone.
And would you still be able to potentially get a job doing that at some point? Or is it just kind of, you would have to do more work to get kind of, because if you've left that area.
So this is going to be another fun, slightly depressing fact that I found for kind of an introvert such as myself. If they don't know you, they're not going to hire you. So it's really, the art world is really an interesting place where you really have to network.
Yeah.
And you have to put yourself out there, which is something that I've always been horrible at. I'm like, please like me, but I'm not sure how to tell you to like me without it was just like this whole thing. And I would actually have to, because I graduated 2012, so it's been 10 years and I never once worked in a museum, so my degree is like not valid anymore. I could reactivate it by taking some digital curation courses, which is an aspect of museums that has had to have evolutionized because of art is turning digital, and people want to access collections without leaving their houses for purpose of research. Like if you're in India and you're researching something, I don't know, from First Nations culture, maybe don't have time to come to the States. So it's all about trying to make this collection as accessible as possible to the public. So interesting.
So where are you living now?
I live in Florida. Good old Florida people.
Gosh.
That's where I am. And I'm trying to convince my husband that we should move up north for the purposes of my crochet wardrobe.
There you go. Do you not, because so you said you grew up in Costa Rica, is that correct? Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you grew up in Puerto Rico, you're in Florida. Do you prefer the colder weather?
I like the idea of colder weather.
Okay.
So I like the idea of being in my house, all my crochet and not sweating. That's it.
Gotcha.
It's not that I feel like my skin's very sensitive, so I don't like being sweaty. It's just a thing. As soon as I sweat, I need to shower. I can't stand that sticky feeling of it drying on you. So that's always been something you get used to if you live 25 years on a tropical island. But then here we have central AC. So unless you leave your house, you don't know what the weather's like. So I got babied now, and I'm not sure I have the thick skin for Puerto Rico anymore.
And I was going to ask you that. So do you ever feel like you would want to move back, or do you feel like you're probably going to stay in the States?
So it depends on the day you ask me.
Okay.
There are times, like, I don't want to get into politics or anything like that, but
there
are times where I'm like, I do want to move back. Like, culturally, you would think not, because Puerto Rico has been part of the United States since 1898. So you would think that culturally it's similar, but it's really not.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to tell people that what I consider family includes up to like third cousins.
Yeah.
Because that's how we grew up. And like Christmas is from after Thanksgiving all the way into almost the end of January, and you're celebrating it all that season. And then when it's family, it's like family.
Yeah.
So I come from a big family. My dad's one of 7. My mom was one of 11. So
it's a big families.
It's huge. So celebrations were huge. At least when we were small and all that. So part of me misses that, but also living here and reading news back home, it's just, again, that would get into politics, but it's just like, it boils my Latin blood.
Yeah.
I'm just like, why is it so hard?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Have you ever lived anywhere else?
No, so my family all grew up in, I say that my mom grew up in Alabama, which is where we are now. So very country, she grew up with horses. Huh?
Where in Alabama?
So we are just outside of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, my brother lives in Huntsville now.
So my grandparents live in Huntsville. My mom grew up in Auburn, so where Auburn University is and all of that. And, she grew up with horses and cowboy boots and country music. And, I got that whole side. She passed away when I was about 11. And my dad had grown up in Ohio, and his father, so my grandfather, the ones who live in Huntsville, he was in the military for a little while, and so they moved around a little bit. He moved to Florida for a little while. I think they were in like Wrightsville Beach. Is that right? Something like that.
I live on the East Coast, and
I can't remember. Or Satellite Beach, maybe. I don't know. But they were in Florida for a little while.
If it was the Army, it was probably Satellite Beach. We have an Air Force base near us. And then there's Pensacola, which is also Air Force, I believe. And I think Satellite is the Army.
Probably right. So they were in Florida for a little while, but they were much more of that kind of northern side of things. So it was funny because when my dad married my mom, it was very north and south, and at that point, the grandparents didn't get along. I'm telling you that right now. But it was, for me, great. I grew up in Alabama, and we lived in Georgia for about 7 years, just outside of Atlanta.
Yeah. I had an aunt, she passed away. She used to live in Georgia, and she kind of faced what you're talking about with the grandparents, because she was Puerto Rican. She moved to Germany, actually, because she was Air Force. That's where she met her husband, and they got married. And when they came back to Georgia, the dad's like, "Are you sure?" She's like, "Dad, what?" She's like, "Well, Puerto Rican women tend to get fat when they get married." I was like,
"Oh my gosh."
So my aunt, she swore she would never gain any weight, and she didn't. But I'm like, I imagine that must have been pretty traumatizing for her, right? Because when you're new and in love, you think everything's going to be all roses. And then, they definitely got that north and south vibe will
Mm-hmm.
going on as well. But yeah, it was. But it's interesting that have you ever wanted to move like more north, or are you like great with Alabama weather?
So I don't think I could live anywhere where it's like snowing and you have
Mm,
to shovel snow. I think it's like you. The idea is kind of cool because I'm like, I do like getting all dressed up and, putting on my layers,
yeah,
but I get cold here. So
yeah.
I'm good. By the time winter is in full swing, I'm ready for summer. By the time summer's in full swing, I'm ready for winter. So I get the best of both worlds. I really don't get snow here.
Hmm.
But it got really cold this year for at least like a week where it
Yeah.
was just like, oh Lord, I need to buy some flannel
Hmm.
underwear, I
Yeah, no.
need some more
My
layers.
mom was
Um,
traveling a lot because I have a nephew. He was born a nano preemie, so she was
mhm.
traveling a lot to Alabama to help my brother take care of him. And it's gotten really hard, first of all, just to get to Alabama. Like it was this whole jump thing. But yeah, she was like, it's really cold. I don't walk anymore because she walks a lot in the morning. She's like, no, it's
Mhm.
20 degrees. I'm not leaving.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
she grew up, actually, my mom was born and raised in Monticello, New York. That's where she was
Okay.
born and raised. Because my grandparents, the diaspora of the 50s, they moved from Puerto Rico to New York, and they moved
Okay.
their whole brood of children. And my mom actually didn't speak any Spanish until they moved her back to Puerto Rico at 15.
Wow.
And like she's like shoved into public school, and public school in Puerto Rico at the time was Spanish. That's the main
Yeah.
language. So she was like, well, sink or swim. So yeah, it's very
Oh,
very interesting.
that's tough. I mean, and I feel like we see that with the US with so many
Mm,
people coming from different countries at different points of time. I remember when they opened the Hyundai plant in Montgomery. I
mm-hmm,
believe it was a Hyundai plant. And they had a lot of people from Korea coming
mm-hmm,
over to live in Montgomery.
mm-hmm.
And I just remember it was this one point I was teaching swim lessons
Okay.
at the time. And I had a lot of Korean children in my swim lesson classes, and they could speak English, but their parents could not.
Mm-mm.
So they were having to go back and forth between their parents, tell
Mm-hmm.
me what the parents said, and
Yep.
the parents literally, like, I remember one mom, every time she came in to bring her kid, she would have an English to Korean, like, dictionary, and she'd be reading it. Like, she would just be reading through, learning what she could.
I
But I
always
feel like we see that a lot.
I always admire that though. Like you know, I I couldn't see myself doing it. Like when I moved to the States, I spoke English
Mhm.
because I was very lucky that my parents sent me to a private school, and it was
Mhm.
mostly English based, which it's kind of unfortunate in Puerto Rico when the main language is Spanish, but you get by.
Mhm.
So moving here, that there was no language barrier for me. But yeah, when people move anywhere in the world, like we're currently getting ready for after 4 years, finally go on our honeymoon.
Oh,
So
it's exciting though.
yeah, because we got married in 2019, and then we're like, we'll go on the honeymoon next year for like a first year anniversary. We'll make it a big thing, and then COVID, and then COVID, and then COVID. So we're like,
Yeah.
whatever.
And then
We
COVID some more.
yeah. So we're getting ready to go to Japan, and I
Oh,
I I thought I knew a little bit because I've been watching anime for a long time, and you'd think you'd pick up stuff because I watch it
something.
in
Yeah.
Japanese with English subtitles.
Hmm.
It's like you just no, I
Are
just no
you are you trying to learn right now? Are you
I gave
taking
I gave
classes
up.
or? Oh,
I
oh
gave up.
no.
My husband, bless him, he's still going strong.
Yeah.
But I'm just like I don't know why. Because when they speak it, it doesn't sound that complicated to us. And like I've received a lot of comments from saying that actually Spanish speakers have an easier time learning Japanese because of
Hmm.
the sounds and things.
Hmm.
So it honestly has the same musical cadence that Spanish.
Gotcha.
So I thought it was going to be easier to learn to speak it.
Yeah.
But when you get into the kanji and all the other stuff. And it would, I was just like, no.
I feel like it's, you said the scatterbrain side. I have a feeling that was not helpful either. I mean, I think,
No,
yeah,
it wasn't. And it's been years since I tried learning. I know it's not an excuse, but it's been years since I tried learning a new language because I did French in college.
hmm,
And that was fine. It's just, it was good. I just didn't practice it enough, so I can't, I still can read it.
yeah,
But speaking it,
hmm.
no. And
Oh,
so it's just very interesting how our brains work. Plus, I've always been more of a learn to speak than read than write. And the
yeah,
way languages are taught is always the reverse. You
yeah,
have to learn to write it, to read it, and
yeah.
then to speak it. And I'm like, I think,
But that's not how kids learn. I
yeah,
mean, I think that's the other thing is thinking about it that way.
right.
You know, I feel like people would be onto something if they created a course for adults that was like what
Yeah,
babies learn. You know,
yeah.
like can we not learn it that way
Yeah, no,
first?
it's true. And I don't know how you guys in the chat learned how to crochet or how you, Evelyn, learned how to crochet. But like I said, I figured out really quickly that I needed a project. So if I wanted to learn increases, I would pick a project that would use increases. Like my
Hmm.
brain didn't want to learn it any other way.
Yeah,
So I usually picked projects based on what skills I was going to learn from it
that's really
because
smart.
that was how I got motivated. And for some reason, that was always garments.
Yeah.
Like that was just me. It's like when I learned how to knit, they always say, "Don't learn how to knit socks. That don't be let that be your first project." I'm like, "Well, that's
Why
my
not?
first project."
Yeah.
They were a horrible pair of socks, but I finished them. So
Well, we're over time, which is fine
okay,
because like I said, I used to do these for an hour, so I'm good with going over. But I wanted to ask you, especially before we go for the day,
Brasil. Hola, yo no falo português, eu falo espanhol e inglês. I think that's how you say it. I don't speak Portuguese. That's all I know how to say in Portuguese. Hi,
and Indigo Dogs,
also learned how
yeah,
to knit.
says that socks were how they learned. Yeah, yeah.
It's
Well, I
motivation.
wanted to ask you a little bit about what made you go into designing and what do you feel like your aesthetic is personally as a designer? Like what kind of garments do you aspire to continue to create and kind of what inspires you there?
Okay, so it's really funny because I was asked a similar question for a Simply Crochet magazine interview that I did, and
Hmm.
oh, okay. So garment making and becoming a designer was a bit of an accident.
Hmm.
So I've never had a proportionate figure. I've never
Hmm.
been like how do you standard size.
Oh, okay.
I I have a very small bust. I have a bigger waist, and I have a bigger butt.
Hmm.
So my measurements were always skewing like extra small, then medium, then large, and now it's just medium, like small, medium, large if you go by the standards. So I was always adapting garments to fit me because I always felt that they were too big on the bust and then
Hmm.
not big enough on the waist for my liking. So I was always adjusting other people's garments, and I was like, oh, I have this idea. Can I carry it out?
Hmm.
I wanted, I've always really liked, I guess, late Victorian, early Edwardian, where they had a lot of lace at the top
Hmm.
and then everything else was solid. So that was kind of like my one of my first designs. I always wanted to incorporate lace. And again, it's because living in a tropical place,
Yep.
I want airflow. I
Yes.
need the space for air to flow so I can feel that I'm breathing. And so I think that my design aesthetic, while I have a hard time pinning it down because I have a lot of interests,
Hmm.
they gear more towards having a vague vintage silhouette
Gotcha.
uh, because I feel that, to, and actually I was watching a podcast about this the other day. Um, women's silhouettes in history have been engineered. You always had something to help you build your silhouette to look like the standard at the time, versus nowadays where our bodies are the silhouette. So fashion is geared towards, like, in the traumatizing 2000s, where you have to be skinny and that's it. And we're going to build all this fashion just for skinny people.
Like
and
low-rise jeans. Super low-rise jeans.
I remember those, and I just don't understand how I walked in them or functioned in them, because I vividly remember disliking them, because anytime you sat down, your butt was on display. I'm like, no. And then finding high-waist jeans was a nightmare in the 2000s. It's like,
well, it was mom jeans. It was mom jeans before they were cool.
Yeah.
So, like, you could either look cool and wear these low-rise jeans, or you could wear the jeans your mom wore, in the 80s and not be cool because it was not in style.
Yep, that was basically it. So I always had that issue with, I guess, modern fashion. I just liked the freedom of taking somebody that, whether I designed it or somebody else designed it, and making it fit me, because all our bodies are different, and I think that's something we should celebrate. And I do not consider that modern fashion celebrates that. And I think actually, as a kid growing up, if you liked anything else, you were ridiculed for it. It wasn't an embrace your originality. It was like, you're in or you're out. So I was always out. And I kind of I didn't mind it, because I just don't, low-rise jeans, like, they were, I will say the quality back when PacSun was very good.
Express
jeans.
I used to buy Express low-rise jeans before now. I mean, and I think the quality of everything has gone down, but it's like you said, those jeans were going to last forever. I remember buying a pair of Gap jeans. I was like, these are the thickest material I have ever, I feel like these are going to last me like a million years, and now it's like, you hope they last a year.
Amiibo works in fashion in Los Angeles.
Amazing.
Wow, that is so cool. But no, I agree with you. I have a pair of Gap jeans, actually, that I bought about 3 years ago. And I think they must have been like dead stock or something, because they were really, really thick fabric.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't fit into them anymore. But it was fine. Mom fits into them. So we exchanged clothes. Yeah. But no, so I think my aesthetic is hard to pin down that way. And I think one of the most common things for me is that I try to use cotton blend yarns, because, again, of where I live. And I like drape. And I like things that can have enough drape to be tucked into jeans or outside of jeans.
That's really nice.
And I tend to work with sport weight at the thickest.
Gotcha.
Just, again, because it's a fabric.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I have to say, though, I love your puff jacket. Is it the puff or the mini puff? Which one's the one that's less bulky?
Okay, so the power puff is going to be like the full-on, like, blanket, extra big, like the biggest blanket yarn they make. That's the Power Puff collection, which is now a collection, which is exciting, because I'm trying to, like, create a vest, and now I'm working on the bomber jacket in that collection. But the mini puff was actually created because when I released the Power Puff jacket, I had a lot of people who said, can you go, like, down one weight size, like make the same kind of jacket, a little bit lighter weight. And so I went from the size 7 yarn to the size 6 yarn to make the mini puff. And so that one, I've got that one, and now I'm working on the bomber style jacket for both. So there'll be a Power Puff bomber and a mini puff bomber, which should be really fun. We'll see.
How do you do so much? Just how do you do so much? Like, I know you do graphic design, and you design, and you do your hooks, and I used to work in a wood shop, so 3D printing, it's not a mystery to me. It's just a mystery how, like, it's so many steps. Like, it's so many steps to get it. And then not just that, but you have to sand it. You have to make sure it doesn't snag on the yarn. How do you do it all?
So, my husband helps tremendously when it comes to the hooks. I mean, he really is the one who he puts the files together, gets the hooks printed, gets the hooks sanded. We resin coat them together.
Okay.
And then he'll sand them again. Sometimes I'll help with the second sanding, but usually not the first. He wants to do the first one. And then we coat them a second round so that they're super smooth. But he really helps with that side of things. I still ship most everything out.
Mm-hmm.
But I really kind of hit a wall this month. I think it was one of my first times where I didn't get burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't gotten to a point where I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore, but I had to take a lot of breaks because we just had so many things happen. We had our stove went out, we were trying to get a new stove, and it never got delivered. And so we were dealing with all that. And then on top of that, our dog gets an ear infection. And then it's, you're dealing with prepping for tax season. And like, it was just so much. And I told my husband, I was like, I'm just tired, like I'm sleeping fine, but it's like, I can't catch up. And so I've just taken breaks. I was like, I don't have to release this. I don't have a timeline, so I can take a break. I can come back to it tomorrow. I should have made much more progress. This is the one that I'm working on now, the mini puff bomber jacket. I'm using the Hobie yarn.
Okay, yeah.
But like, last year, I feel like when I was kind of in the groove, I'd be done with that already. But
Wow.
I've just kept putting it off because, I'm like, I'll focus on this for now. And, it's definitely, it can be a lot.
It's just hard to be on all the time. And not just that, like, if you're like, okay, let me take a break, and then you're bombarded with so much hate from the news, and it's like, well, now I gotta disassociate from that. So it's been a hard, probably I would say since possibly 2019.
Couple years.
So I don't think as humans we've rested at all. Like, we haven't actually taken a moment to process all that's happened and be like, okay, I'm gonna sit with my emotions, process all of them at once, and now I can move forward. We've sort of been just like shoving it into a box that's going oversized and it's about to explode. So yeah, that's it can happen. And like, especially when you're your own boss and you're like, no, I gotta get this out. If I don't get this out, I got bills to pay. This is a family business in your case as well. So if this doesn't come out, we don't pay it. Yeah, I'm lucky in that aspect that my husband, so far, he's been like, no, we're doing this. And he's like extended my own deadlines because Claudia, yes, crochet is definitely a safe haven. I agree. It's like, even if I'm designing, I'll just stop designing and work on somebody else's pattern.
Or a personal project or something where you don't feel like it has to be for money. And I think, it's like you said, if I take a break, then I'm like, well, now, yesterday I had taken 2 days off because we were dealing with the dog, different appointments, things like that. So I had 2 days where I was like, I don't think I posted. I might have posted at the end of the second day, maybe like 2, because it was like, okay, I've got to post something. But then my Etsy orders stacked up. So then I was like, well, now I have 18 orders that I have to package up, which again, like, super thankful. Like, I'm like, I don't want people to not buy things. Like, this is, this is what we need. But it does get, and then God forbid you turn the news on and you're like, oh my gosh, like, we're going to be in a recession. Like, how are we going to make money? You have all of these worries, and it is difficult to find a way to process it in a healthy way and not work yourself to death.
Yeah, that's the key. Like, I turn on the news and I'm like, is it too much to ask for basic human decency? Like, is that too much? Like, I don't expect a lot from people. Just the minimum. So it can get hard. And I know that we both met each other because of the Crochet Business Academy. And I've tried to put a lot of the things into practice, and it's also been hard just staying motivated when you don't see yourself where you were hoping to be. And mostly because, as you said, there's this recession. Like, I'm lucky that my husband, for now, he's got a very stable job, very stable income. But what if he didn't? I couldn't be able to do this. I'd have to go out and I'd have to work at an office, and all the difficulties that brings. And I would not work on my business because I know myself. I'd be I would need to decompress from that
Yes.
office, and I couldn't do it by going back to work, no matter how much I loved crochet work. So yeah, it's interesting, this
Yep.
self-employed venture. It's like, you know what? Instead of putting up with all the office, and like I said, I had the very unfortunate experience to work in a very, very toxic office environment
Yep.
before I got laid off. So I think I've just stayed with that, and I'm like, would I rather be there or would I rather be here? Struggling to
Mm-hmm.
make money but happier.
Yeah.
Or making money but completely miserable.
And it is one of those situations I found, I know for sure, where in most cases, you know, when you put more effort in, you make more money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's never the case with like a salaried job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you make what you make, you know, hopefully you do a good enough job to keep your job, maybe get a raise.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like if I put more effort in, I'm going to make more money, you know, whereas when you work for yourself, in most cases, if you can figure out the right way to prioritize, you can work harder and make more money, you know, which is great. Or you can, you know, figure out, okay, I'm going to back off for a little while.
That's right, Claudia. No one can be motivated all the time. That is very true. And it is important that we all, whether or not we work as self-employed or work for somebody else, just take a moment to be with ourselves and be like, am I okay today? Like, am I really okay?
Yeah.
So I think it's, I don't know, literally, we just need to be more human and accept that. Right.
Well,
yeah, it's all.
and I know I found that this community, I know at least for me, because I don't tend to, luckily, I don't tend to bring drama to myself. I tend to kind of I don't attract it, I guess, which has been really nice. And I tend to try to stay out of things and I think a lot of it is because I can be very anxious, and I tend to be more on the empath side of things, of like taking on other people's emotions.
That's me.
And so, you know, I think, you know, within the crochet community, there are so many like micro communities, and it's easier to find a place in the community that you feel is supportive. And I think that's what's so important, is finding the areas or the groups or the people that you feel are supportive of you, and you being supportive of them, and creating that community for yourself. And I think that whether you work in crochet, fiber, any of that or not, whether crochet is just a hobby, it really can be like, I can't remember who said it in the comments, but it's a safe haven. It really can become a place where you can, you know, decompress, you know, talk to friends, see what they're up to. And I think that has been one of the beautiful things about social media, I think.
Yeah, you definitely find, like, obviously, as we've discussed, there are drawbacks, but you can definitely find your own community and just be respectful of each other and accept that we're all people, right? No matter how much we're trying to build a business. I think that's has been one of my hardest things, marketing yourself as a brand when you know that you have feelings, and you know that you want to stand up for things. And it's like, well, if I stand up for myself, people might not like that, and then I won't make money. And it, like, whether I feel that if you market yourself as a person, you have more, I don't want to say liberties in that sense, but it's a little bit more freeing, because it is you.
It's you.
Or at least it is a part of you, because I know that it's hard to be 100% yourself on the internet. There's always going to be aspects that you don't share with people for privacy reasons or for personal reasons or anything like that. So I think that within the authenticity that a lot of people want to have, you kind of have boundaries, though. You know, it's like, yes, this is me, but also I'm that dark and twisty person over there who's just being angry at the world right now. So yeah, it's important. And I think that it's very amazing that we all found crochet, and that we all honor the different traditions of where it comes from. And exactly, Claudia, we cheer each other on. That is super, super important. Claudia does some great crochet projects, by the way. She does a lot of, she'll buy a knitting pattern and she'll turn it into crochet for herself. Like, she doesn't do it to sell, but she'll just be like, nope, I'm reworking this. I want that color work knit, but I want it in crochet. She does she does some great shit.
I mean,
but no.
And that was my original, when I first started designing, I was so jealous of like the chunky oversized knit cardigans, and I hated trying to knit them. And so I was like, I want that, but in crochet. So that was like my original, the Luna cardigan, which was the first cardigan that I released. It was like full sleeve, oversized, you know, has become such a classic because like that was me in a nutshell. That's what I wanted out of crochet, was to create those beautiful, chunky, oversized, crazy, a little crazy designs. So
I think it's really fun how you play with color. I don't play with color a lot because, like I said, there's like two sides of me. So there's the side, I mean, if you want to compare it with something, I guess we can compare it with Wednesday. This is her friend. It's like super pastel-y. I've never liked pastels, but yeah, the color, and then Wednesday. And I feel like I am 75% Wednesday, and like the rest is the color. So I'm like, what? That's the beauty of colors, I think. You can design in whatever color you want, and people will always put their own spin on it because it's art. Like that's how we express ourselves, and I love it when people tag me and they make my designs, but they've turned it into something that will fit them. I'm like, that is fantastic. That was my whole
it's like
idea.
the best part to me. Seeing what my testers create, seeing the colors they choose, seeing the yarn they choose, seeing the style that they're going with. It's amazing because it's like I wouldn't have even thought of it.
No, for sure. And I think that's, as a designer, that's one of the things that I also like to do. I will never crochet my same pattern twice. And what I mean by that is that I will design it this way, and then I will go make another version that changes about 10 or 20 things from that original design. And then I'm like, oh, what if I do that? And then I go and it's the same design, but like with small tweaks here and there. And I like doing that because I want to show people that, see, this is all you can do with this one pattern. Here's everything you can do with it. And like you said, I think that's the best part, and that's the most exciting part too, is just the freedom to create, I guess.
Do you consider most of your patterns to be on the beginner friendly, easy, or do you feel like most of yours are a little more advanced?
Based on the definitions of the Craft Yarn Council, mine would probably almost all be classified as intermediate, because I do a lot. I do increases or decreases, or I work with several different stitches in one same pattern, and that can get confusing. Myself, I never read that. I just go for it. Like I said, I just like, that's pretty. And whatever I need to look up to make that design, I will look up. So I don't know this stitch, look up a video for that stitch. I don't understand this piece, look up a video for that. That's just the way I work. So I will confess, I almost always forget to label the difficulty of my designs.
Gotcha.
I do it for magazines because they're like, hey, and I'm like, oh.
Yep.
So it's always interesting. I do have some, see, that's the problem, because I think that they use easy stitches. They're not hard stitches, and the techniques are, I would say, common. You know, you're building a garment, so it's either in pieces or in the round. And I think the pattern people have ever had a lot of difficulty with has actually been the summer fan top, which is one of my most popular patterns. And I am going back and making them size inclusive, because when you first start, you don't trust yourself. So I graded until I felt comfortable grading, and then above that I was like, oh, I'm gonna screw this up. So
it takes time. My first patterns were not fully size inclusive, and I'm having to slowly go back through and update.
That's been me this year. And also, like, some of the things you designed, yarn no longer is made, so you go back and you try to test it. Will it work with something different? So so that one is a T construction. It starts bottom up, and then you chain in one direction to build the sleeve, and then when you come back, you do foundation single crochet to build the other side of the sleeve.
And that is definitely a little more on the like,
yeah,
you got to kind of have, you know,
yeah,
a little bit of practice.
Bit of practice, definitely. So I usually have people are like, why do I only have one sleeve? And I'm like, well, here,
yeah,
here is where you should have made both sleeves. And they're like, oh,
yeah,
that's what that was. I'm
yeah.
like, oh. So I think for that pattern, I might obviously go back and make it size inclusive. But also I did a second version of it that eliminated the T shape. And
Gotcha.
you just pick up your sleeves and work them in the round after you seam it, just to make it easier, but also because I did a more Edwardian style with that one, and there's a keyhole in the back, and you tie it with a button.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I like it.
So thrilled with myself when I figured that one out. I was like, oh, this is great. So
That's awesome.
yeah, I think definitely maybe that's where my degree in history comes in.
Yes, exactly. The culture side and fashion. And I love it.
It's
that's
like,
awesome.
I always tell people it's like vintage fashion, not vintage values. That is where I stand. So yeah, that's just me and my scattered brain journey through all of the crochet world. My mentality has, and I'm trying to get better at it, because building a business, you really have to change your mentality. But my mentality has always been, let's just play around and see what happens.
Yes.
Go from there.
Exactly. Open to opportunity is what I like to say.
Yeah.
And I think it's a healthy way to not get into a rut, to stay open to creating new things and not feeling, you know, burnout because you're doing the same thing over and over again. Well, I feel like we could probably talk for a whole nother hour. And I'll have to have you back on. I think for sure this will be the year where, especially people where I feel like we could maybe pick a topic and focus around that topic.
Yeah.
I think that would be really fun.
It also encourages critical thinking, because we both design, I feel, in very different yarn weights. So there's definitely a lot that we could talk about in terms of dealing with yarn and like, do you get aches and pains? How do you deal with those? Yeah, so definitely open.
And we both
being on
see chiropractors, so I definitely think that would be
every week.
My
or
favorite.
I do not function. No.
Yeah.
My doctor.
Well, I am so glad that you came on, and I hope everyone who joined us enjoyed our chat. You know, I am going to be bringing these back every Friday now, and I did want to remind everyone, if you're watching this is the final day to enter the giveaway for the yarn bowl. So this was the handmade yarn bowl by Corey of Karai Goods. It's quite a few posts back to enter, but it's in my stories. So you go to my stories, you can click on the post, you can enter to win one of these limited edition yarn bowls that she's making. And this is a Karen Cakes jumbo chunky cakes that's fit in there for reference. So this is meant for the chunky yarn, but also great if you do color work with very small yarn. So if you want multiples, you've got the whole
the holes there. Yeah, you can.
You could fit a couple of smaller weight cakes or skeins in here. But today's the last day. We'll announce tonight after I go grocery shopping finally, because supposed to do that yesterday when I went to the chiropractor, but then the dog had to go to the vet. So it's life, right?
Life happens.
Yes. Well, again, thank you for coming on. I'll definitely have you back on. We will obviously stay in touch.
Yeah.
But again, thanks to everyone who joined us, everyone watching the replay. We appreciate you. And I hope you'll have an amazing weekend and get some crocheting in. And we'll see y'all soon. Happy looking, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.